It started with a 911 call over nothing, and somehow turned into the most satisfying, awkward, slow-motion public meltdown I have ever witnessed from my own front porch. And the wildest part is this. The woman who made that call genuinely believed she was about to put us in our place. She just didn't realize she was calling the police on the police chief. Now, before I get into the actual showdown, you need a little context, because this didn't come out of nowhere. Things like this never do. We live in a semi-rural community just outside a mid-sized county seat in Tennessee. It's the kind of place where you've got 3 acres minimum per lot, a mix of newer custom homes and older farmhouses, and enough trees between properties that you can almost pretend you don't have neighbors. Almost. But we do have an HOA. And like most HOAs, it started out harmless. Basic stuff. Keep your grass under control. No junk cars in the yard. Don't paint your house neon orange. Fine. Reasonable. Then there was Denise Caldwell. Denise had been on the HOA board for years before we moved in. Retired real estate agent. Perfectly manicured yard. Always in white capris. The kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes. She didn't just enforce rules, she curated them. She treated the neighborhood like a portfolio listing she never wanted to close. From day one, she and my wife didn't click. My wife, Rachel, is steady. That's the word I always use. She doesn't posture. She doesn't escalate. She doesn't back down either. She grew up in a law enforcement family, put in her years on patrol, detective work, administration, and about 6 months before this incident, she was appointed county police chief. First woman in the county's history to hold that title. She never flaunted it. Most of our neighbors didn't even know. Around here, people either love law enforcement or they're suspicious of it. So Rachel just kept it quiet. At home, she was just Rachel. Boots by the door. Hair in a messy bun. Coffee reheated 3 times a morning. Denise, though, liked authority, as long as it was hers. The first friction started over something small. We had a small outbuilding, technically a workshop, that predated the HOA rules. It wasn't falling apart. It wasn't ugly. But Denise claimed it didn't fit the aesthetic direction of the community. That was her phrase. Aesthetic direction. Like we were a mall. Rachel handled it politely. Sent documentation showing it was grandfathered in. End of story. Except it wasn't. After that, Denise started watching us. Not in a dramatic, hiding in bushes way. More subtle. Slow drive-bys. Pausing when Rachel would practice drawing and reholstering her sidearm in our yard. Safely, controlled, facing into a backstop on our own property. Legal. Responsible. Routine for someone in her position. Denise hated it. One afternoon at a community cookout, she pulled Rachel aside near the lemonade table and said, in that low, syrupy voice, "Some of the residents feel uncomfortable seeing firearms displayed." Rachel didn't take the bait. She just said, "I'm on my property. I'm within my rights. And I'm trained." Denise smiled thinly. Rights are one thing. Harmony is another. That right there, that was the core of it. Denise believed harmony meant control. It meant nobody stepping outside her definition of proper. And Rachel represented something Denise couldn't regulate. Fast forward to the day everything boiled over. It was a Saturday. Warm but breezy. I was inside working on invoices for my construction business, half listening to classic rock on low volume. Rachel had just come back from the range and was walking across the side yard with her duty weapon holstered, heading toward the barn to store some equipment. Normal. Ordinary. 100 times before. My phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. Then again. It was our neighbor Kyle from across the gravel lane. "Hey man, is Rachel outside with her service weapon?" I frowned. Texted back, "Yeah, why?" He responded almost immediately. "Denise is on the road. She's on the phone. Looks intense." I stepped onto the porch. And there she was. Denise stood near the edge of our property line, technically still on the shared easement, one hand on her hip, the other clutching her phone like she was reporting a bank robbery. I could hear her voice carry in that sharp, urgent tone people use when they want to be taken very seriously. Yes, there's an armed individual walking around the property. I don't know her intentions. I feel unsafe. I actually laughed at first because it felt absurd. Like performance art. Rachel hadn't even noticed yet. She was methodically checking the barn door latch. Denise kept pacing, gesturing dramatically toward Rachel as if the dispatcher could see through the phone. "This is escalating," she said. "The HOA has rules against threatening behavior." Threatening behavior. That's when it stopped being funny. Not because Rachel was in danger, She wasn't, but because I suddenly understood what Denise was trying to do. This wasn't about fear. This was about forcing compliance. She had tried notes. She had tried polite pressure. She had tried community shaming. None of it worked. So now she was escalating to the ultimate authority. The irony just hadn't caught up to her yet. Rachel finally looked over, calm as ever. She saw Denise, saw the phone, saw me on the porch. She tilted her head slightly, that subtle expression she gets when she's assessing a situation without reacting emotionally. I walked down the steps slowly, not wanting to inflame anything. "Everything okay?" I called out. Denise didn't answer me. She just raised her finger like a school principal silencing a child and said loudly into the phone, "Yes, I'm still here. I'll wait for officers to arrive." And that's when Rachel began walking toward her. Unhurried, measured, hand nowhere near her weapon. The breeze moving through the trees like nothing historic was unfolding at all. Denise straightened up, shoulders squared, like she was about to witness justice descending from the sky. She truly believed she had won, and she had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. Rachel didn't speed up. She didn't slow down either. She walked the way she always walks when something's off, balanced, grounded, like she's stepping into a situation that already belongs to her. Denise saw her coming and stiffened. You could almost see the narrative forming in her head. Armed woman approaches frightened resident. Heroic caller awaits backup. Order will be restored. I was about halfway across the yard when Rachel stopped a few feet short of the property line. She didn't cross into the easement. Didn't need to. "Denise," she said, calm and even, "what's going on?" Denise lowered the phone slightly, but kept it connected. "I'm on with emergency services," she replied, voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "There's an armed individual behaving in a threatening manner." Rachel blinked once. Not offended, not amused, just taking inventory. "Threatening how?" "You're walking around with a gun in plain sight," Denise snapped, finding her footing. "People can see you from the road. This is a residential community." Rachel rested her hands loosely at her sides. "It's a duty weapon. I just came back from the range." "That's not the point," Denise said sharply. "This makes people feel unsafe." There it was again. Feel. The breeze kicked up, rustling the long grass between us. I could see two neighbors now standing near their mailboxes pretending not to stare. Kyle had his arms folded, watching like he knew something Denise didn't. Rachel spoke gently, but her tone had that underlying steel. "Denise, I'm on my property. I'm legally carrying. And I'm not threatening anyone." Denise lifted the phone again. "Yes, she's still here," she told the dispatcher. "She's approaching me now." Rachel's eyebrow raised just slightly. "Approaching you?" We were still separated by a good 15 feet. I stepped closer but stayed quiet. This was Rachel's lane. "Denise," Rachel said, voice steady. "You don't need to call 911 over this." "I absolutely do," Denise shot back. "The HOA has a responsibility to maintain safety standards." And that's when Rachel exhaled, not in frustration, just in recognition. She had seen this before. Power struggles disguised as procedure. "Denise," she said again, firmer this time. "I'm going to ask you something clearly. Are you reporting a crime?" Denise hesitated. "Well, no, but..." "Am I trespassing?" "No." "Have I threatened you?" "You're armed." That wasn't my question. There was a pause. Even the wind seemed to wait. "No," Denise admitted, jaw tightening. Rachel nodded once. "Then you're making a false emergency report." Denise's face flushed. "Excuse me." Rachel reached slowly for her badge, which was clipped to her belt beneath her light jacket. She didn't flash it dramatically. She simply turned it outward so Denise could see. "I am County Police Chief Rachel Morgan." The words hung there. I've replayed that moment in my head more times than I can count, and what I remember most isn't the shock, it's the silence. Denise's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. You could almost see the gears grinding in her mind, trying to reconcile the script she had prepared with the reality standing in front of her. "That's not," she started. "You never said." "You never asked," Rachel replied. The dispatcher must have been speaking because Denise pulled the phone back to her ear, voice suddenly less confident. "Yes, she's saying she's the police chief." "I what?" Rachel waited patiently. Denise's posture began to deflate in stages. First her shoulders dropped. Then her chin lowered. Then that tight control she always carried just slipped. The dispatcher had obviously verified it. Denise swallowed. They're saying they're aware." Rachel nodded again. Of course they are. I saw Kyle cover his mouth, trying not to laugh. Mrs. Hanley from 2 houses down actually turned her back, shoulders shaking. Denise's voice went thinner now, stripped of that righteous urgency. I was just concerned. Someone with a weapon. I am allowed to carry my service weapon, Rachel said, still calm. And I am allowed to exist on my own property without harassment. Harassment? That word landed. Denise looked around and realized she had an audience. And that's when embarrassment turned into defensiveness. This isn't about you, she snapped. It's about community standards. Rachel's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Community standards do not override state law. And they certainly do not override my authority. That was the first time Denise truly looked small. But instead of backing down gracefully, she grasped for something. Anything, to regain footing. Well, maybe if you hadn't kept it a secret, she said quickly. People deserve transparency. Rachel tilted her head slightly. My employment status is not subject to HOA approval. I had to look down at that point because I was grinning. Denise's breathing grew shallow. The narrative she built, the brave protector's summoning order, had collapsed in front of witnesses. And the worst part for her wasn't being wrong. It was losing control publicly. A county patrol unit slowly rolled past at the end of the lane. Not lights, not sirens. Just a quiet acknowledgement. The deputy tipped his hat through the window and kept going. Denise saw it. Her face went from red to pale. They didn't even stop, she murmured. No reason to, Rachel said. Now here's where it could have ended. Rachel could have left it there, let Denise retreat with whatever dignity she could salvage. But Denise couldn't let go. This is intimidation, she said suddenly, voice rising again. You're using your position to silence me. That one stung a little, not because it was true, but because of the implication. Rachel took one step forward, still on our property. I have not raised my voice. I have not threatened you. I have not left my land. You called emergency services without a criminal basis because you dislike that I won't comply with your preferences. That's not intimidation. That's misuse of resources. Denise opened her mouth, then closed it again. And then, almost unbelievably, she tried one last pivot. The board will hear about this. Rachel's lips twitched, not quite a smile. I look forward to it. Behind us, I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." Denise stood there another few seconds, phone still in her hand, as if waiting for the universe to reset itself. It didn't. Eventually, she muttered something under her breath, something about documentation and further review, and turned sharply toward her SUV. As she walked away, her steps were stiff, mechanical, like she was holding herself together through sheer will. But the story wasn't over. Because humiliation, when mixed with wounded pride, doesn't dissolve quietly. It ferments. And I could already tell. This was going to ripple. Denise didn't slam her car door. That would have been easier to digest. Instead, she got in slowly, shut it with quiet control, and just sat there for a few seconds, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like she was recalculating her entire identity. Then she drove off. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just gone. The yard stayed quiet for a moment after that, like the air itself was processing what had just happened. Kyle walked over first, shaking his head. "Man," he said under his breath, "she really thought she had you." Rachel unclipped her badge and slid it back under her jacket like it was just another tool on a belt. "She didn't have me," she replied softly. "She had a narrative. That stuck with me, because that's really what this had been about from the beginning. Not safety, not firearms, not even HOA rules. Control. Denise built her identity around being the guardian of order in this neighborhood. She was an elected sheriff. She wasn't appointed to anything beyond a volunteer board position. But in her mind, she was the line between civilization and chaos. And Rachel, a woman who carried quiet authority without asking permission, disrupted that. Over the next few days, the story spread the way stories do in small communities. Quietly at first. A text thread here. A driveway conversation there. Then full retellings at the mailbox. "Did you hear she called 911? On the police chief? No way. Way." What surprised me wasn't the laughter, though there was plenty of that. It was the shift. People started speaking more openly about past run-ins with Denise. Fines for garden beds that were half an inch too tall. Warning letters over mailbox paint shades. Passive-aggressive emails about visual uniformity. Turns out we weren't the only ones who felt managed. 3 nights after the incident, There was an emergency HOA board meeting. Not officially labeled that, of course. It was framed as a community alignment session. That's what the email said. Rachel debated going. She didn't have to, but she did. We walked into the clubhouse and the room felt charged. Folding chairs arranged in rows. Fluorescent lights buzzing faintly. Denise sat at the front table with two other board members, Mr. Alvarez and Dana Mitchell, both of whom looked like they hadn't slept much. Denise's posture was rigid, but her eyes were sharp. Not defeated. Defensive. She opened the meeting with formal language about recent misunderstandings. She didn't mention 911 directly at first. She spoke about safety concerns, visibility of weapons, the importance of comfort within shared spaces. Then Rachel stood up. She didn't go to the front. She stayed where she was. "I'd like to clarify something," she said, voice even, carrying naturally without effort. There was no crime. There was no threat. There was no policy violation. There was a difference of preference. The room was silent. Rachel continued. Emergency services were called over a lawful act on private property. That is not a community safety measure. That is escalation. Denise's jaw tightened. "I acted in good faith," she interjected. Rachel nodded. Intent doesn't erase impact. That line, it shifted the energy. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat and asked gently, "Denise, did dispatch confirm Chief Morgan's status before sending anyone out?" Denise hesitated just long enough to answer the question without speaking. Dana finally said what no one else had yet. "This has exposed some concerns about how we're handling disputes." There it was. Not about guns. Not about authority. About power. The meeting didn't explode into drama. It wasn't a movie scene with shouting and gavel banging. It was quieter than that. More uncomfortable. Neighbors spoke. Carefully at first, then more honestly. About tone. About overreach. About fear of being singled out. Denise tried to defend her track record. Listed improvements she'd overseen. Property values stabilized. Landscaping guidelines enforced. But the illusion had cracked. And once people see that authority can misfire spectacularly, they start asking harder questions. By the end of the meeting, a review committee was proposed. Nothing dramatic. Just oversight. Shared decision-making. Transparency. Denise agreed, but her smile was thin. When we left, Rachel squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I just don't like when power becomes personal. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Authority isn't dangerous by itself. It's when someone ties their identity to it so tightly that losing face feels like losing self." A week later, Denise resigned from the board. The official reason cited personal time constraints. But everyone knew. I saw her once after that at the grocery store. She avoided eye contact at first, then surprised me by approaching. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just less armored. "I was trying to protect the neighborhood," she added. "From what?" I asked gently. She didn't answer. And that's the thing. Sometimes people fight battles against threats that exist only in their own narratives. Rachel never gloated. Never mentioned it again unless someone else did. She kept doing what she's always done, serving the county, coming home tired, reheating coffee. But something in the neighborhood shifted. There's less fear now when someone stands their ground. Less automatic deference to whoever holds a clipboard. More conversations instead of citations. And sometimes I think about how easily it could have gone differently. If Rachel had reacted emotionally. If Denise had doubled down harder. If that patrol car had stopped and made a scene. It could have escalated into something ugly. Instead, it became a mirror. Denise saw herself through it, maybe for the first time. And we saw something too. That being right isn't the same as being righteous. That law and harmony don't have to be enemies. And that sometimes the loudest authority in the room is the one that never raises its voice. Now I'm curious what you think. Was Denise completely out of line? Or was she reacting the way many people might when they see something that scares them? Should HOAs have limits when it comes to personal rights on private property? And if you were in Rachel's position, would you have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you probably think. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about a phone call. It was about power, perception, and what happens when the two collide in plain daylight. And trust me, in small communities like ours, people don't forget moments like that. Not for a long time.